Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today will be a fairly brief video just discussing some books I have gotten from some recent library hauls, and I'm starting with this one on top. Voices from the Titanic, which is kind of like, an anthology book gathering like testimonies and stuff from various different survivors, and it was edited by Geoff Tibballs. In the back, obviously, hopefully everybody knows what the Titanic was, but the synopsis on the back. The tragic story of the sinking of the great passenger liner Titanic has been told countless times since that fateful night on April 14, 1912, by historians, novelists, and film producers alike. No accounts, however, have been as graphic or revealing as those from the passengers and crew that survived its maiden voyage. Through survivors' tales and contemporary newspaper reports from both sides of the Atlantic, here are eyewitness accounts full of details that range from poignant to humorous. From the liner's glorious launch in Belfast to the somber sea burial services of those who perished, Voices from the Titanic is a comprehensive record of the survivors' own stories, official records, press reports, and investigations into one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history. And I believe, I did mention this in at least one previous video. I have never seen the 1997 Titanic film, and hope never to. I've seen like a few clips here and there on television over the years, but I have deliberately avoided that for all these years because all these like girls in my high school, they saw that film frickin' over and 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 over again, and they're like, bawling at the end. And I really have a very strong distaste for that film because it uses one of history's greatest maritime disasters as like a minor fluffy backdrop to a beyond improbable MTV era love story transported to 1912, which is like everything about that film is so unrealistic. They just historical anachronisms and just like historical errors and just like so many things that were wrong with that. And I was like probably like maybe 15 or so years ago, I read a book called The Irish Aboard Titanic, and I added, I think, pretty much everybody in that book to find a grave who wasn't already on the database. And interestingly enough, one of the Irish aboard Titanic survivors, she was like one of the rare few categories of an in utero survivor in the Titanic. Her mother was pregnant with her when she escaped, and she was, as far as we know, the only unborn Titanic survivor to a third-class passenger, because unfortunately many of the steerage passengers were, prevented from getting onto lifeboats or was just too far away. For example, the famous cry of women and children first was more like first-class British and American women and children first. Like if you weren't, like white and delightsome wasp, you could basically, go screw yourself and find your own lifeboat if you could get there in time. Lots of, classism went into that, and the whole, like women and children first thing wasn't about, oh, we value and love women above all else. It was more like, viewing women as their property. But anyway, that's like a whole topic for a whole other video, and I am looking forward to going through this book, and probably like the extreme classism of the era will come through loud and clear, and who was saved and etc. like that. And here's a graphic novel they had on display, historical graphic novels, and this one looked good. I looked at some of the others, they looked interesting too. Maybe I'll get to them eventually. And this is about Redbone, the true story of a Native American rock band. They were in the 70s mostly. They might have been afterwards, but I'll obviously find out as I read the book. Experience the riveting, powerful story of the Native American civil rights movement and the resulting struggle for identity, told through the high-flying career of West Coast rock and roll pioneers Redbone. Brothers Pat and Lolly Vegas were talented Native American rock musicians that took the 1960s Sunset Strip by storm. They influenced the Doors and jammed with Jimi Hendrix. They misspelled his name before he was Jimmy, and the idea of a band made up of all Native Americans soon followed. Determined to control their creative vision and maintain their cultural identity, they eventually signed a deal with Epic Records in 1969. But as the American Indian movement gained momentum, the band took a stand, choosing pride in their ancestry over continued commercial reward. And there's a brief foreword by the guy who helped to put the book together, or who was related to them. I'm just going to read that basically. This is the foreword. The story of Pat and Lolly Vegas is not easily told, but is undoubtedly understood through the soul. The story of Redbone is equally as significant, as it changed the lives of Pat, Lolly, Tony, Pete, and Butch, along with all those who took a chance to listen to their message. The Native American community went through a lot of trials and tribulations, with losses and gains, and peace pipes in between, from the loss of many lives up to 100 million in genocide, to Wounded Knee, segregation, and more, all the way to transformation. There are many instances where the strength of the Native community was tested, but through it all, we prevailed. I am honored to introduce the story of my father and uncle's journey. Every day I sit in amazement for what they have accomplished and how their ongoing ripple effect continues to elevate those around them. Pat and Lolly did not come from a financially wealthy family, but a family wealthy in love and communication. They were taught at a young age what hard work truly means, and from that modality, they built the foundation of success. They struggled, went hungry some nights, played their butts off, and lived with depth, had the lowest of lows and the highest of highs. Everywhere they went stood for something and represented awareness in a time of serious conformity, especially through their music. This gave them a platform to become legendary, and boy did they. They are the faces of the community and the heart of the city and will continue to inspire all those around them. This story goes into detail about the origin of Pat Vegas, Lolly Vegas, and the birth of Redbone. It will take you through the history of our people and the future of our next generation. Whether Native American or not, this is an incredible story for everyone, and one that all can relate to, as we all have felt this tomahawk of struggle. There is a beautiful aspect of realization to it, that through it all, if you remain true to your core and keep striving for all that moves you, your dreams surely will come true. I hope you enjoy this flashback journey into the history of my family. It's rich in knowledge, wisdom, truth, love, originality, and strength. This is one story you will never forget. Remember, we are all one race, the human race. The more we understand that, the more we understand ourselves and can come together to make a brighter future. This is your time now to get inspired and make a change. Don't wait. And then it goes on to, credit a number of different people. And this is just like a little example of some of the illustrations in the book. It looks very good. I've been interested in graphic novels since I took a YA literature course in 2011. That was one of the few genres I actually liked. And as I've mentioned probably in many previous videos, I've been a passionate Native American ally since I was 5 or 6 years old and found out about what that horrible person Columbus and the Spanish conquistadores did to the Native Americans in North and South America. I never, ever, ever thought Christopher Columbus was a hero, or that, like Cortez and Pizarro and those dudes were heroes either. It's the reason I have very mixed feelings about Thanksgiving and hold it more as the day of mourning. But again, that's totally off topic, a thing for another subject. But I have been a passionate Native American ally since I was like in kindergarten and first grade. And this is, something genuine to me. When I'm in a position to do so, I will like to give you a yearly or even a monthly contribution to the Indian College Fund. It's just like something very, very close to my heart. And when, God forbid, well, obviously you have to pass over sometime, but when it is my, time to go to the other world, my will have, donate some of my money to the Indian College Fund and some other Native American causes. And now here's when I already began reading Hidden Valley Road, Inside the Mind of an American Family by Robert Kolker. It was in a display at the library about books that are like nonfiction, but they're written as engagingly as novels, and it's about how mental illness really impacted a family, because a lot of their 12 children had these like schizophrenic episodes and just other like mental health problems. The riveting story of an American family with 12 children, 6 of whom were diagnosed with schizophrenia, that became science's great hope in the quest to conquer an elusive disease. Don and Mimi Galvin seemed to be living the American dream. After World War II, Don's work with the Air Force brought them to Colorado, where their 12 children perfectly spanned the baby boom. There was a script for a family like the Galvins: hard work, upward mobility, domestic harmony, and they all tried to play their parts. But behind the closed doors of the house on Hidden Valley Road was a far different reality: psychological breakdown, sudden shocking violence, and hidden abuse. By the mid-1970s, 6 of the 10 Galvin boys, one after the other, were diagnosed with schizophrenia, and the other 6 children stood by, horrified, with no way of knowing whether they would be next. What took place on Hidden Valley Road was so extraordinary that the Galvins became one of the first families to be studied by the National Institute of Mental Health, and a tour de force of narrative nonfiction. Award-winning journalist Robert Kolker, author of the best-selling Lost Girls, tells the intimate story of the Galvins, alongside the epic tale of science's quest to uncover the true nature of a mystifying disease. Each mentally ill brother emerges as wholly individual, with remarkably different expressions of the same disorder. The 2 youngest Galvins, the only girls, are indelible characters, best friends, both victimized by their brothers, who make sharply different choices about how to cope. The Galvin story crests in a breakthrough that, thanks to their unique DNA, offers hope of eliminating schizophrenia forever. Hidden Valley Road is a captivating medical mystery and a heartbreaking drama, But above all, it is an unforgettable lesson at what it means to be a family. And I've been looking at some of the reviews on Goodreads and Amazon as I'm reading through it, because obviously, it's not really like a spoiler book. If it's non-fiction, you kind of know what happened anyway from the forward. These brothers suffered so horribly, and just people couldn't really understand their condition in that era. And some people are complaining, oh, why would the parents keep having children? Or who wants 12 children nowadays? Or like, couldn't they realize this abuse was going on in their own home? Or they like care more about, social advancement than, helping children being abused, or when they know like something is going on, or these like boys just aren't acting normal and their roughhousings is more than just like the so-called boys will be boys thing. Well, the author himself points out like people in that era just genuinely didn't understand like mental health. Like, for example, like you would like keep it behind closed doors, the old mantra, what's not nice we don't show it. If they had been taken to a mental hospital in that era before, like at the very latest, like the late 1960s, early 1970s, even if that, they wouldn't have been treated very properly. And this was also an era when like so-called like schizophrenogenic mothers and like refrigerator mothers were blamed for their children's conditions, and we just didn't have like modern humane scientific understanding of mental health conditions at all, like let alone like sexual abuse, which the youngest children, the two girls, are subjected to. That's just, we have like completely different way in how we like look at these things and treat them now. And that's like kind of proving the author's point, it was a completely different world, and you shouldn't really keep judging like people in like situations in the past with modern eyes. And this is one I just began reading last night, but I had been like dipping in and maybe the day before that, I think, but I'd been like dipping in and out of it before, and I had seen it previously in the nonfiction that reads like fiction display at the library, and it looked really good to me, and I'm really enjoying it. Hopefully I will be to finish reading it before it has to go back to the library, but it's so good I might even consider buying a copy for myself. And this is about The Great Migration, The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. In this epic, beautifully written masterwork, Pulitzer Prize-winning author Isabel Wilkerson chronicles one of the great untold stories of American history: the decades-long migration of black citizens who fled the South for northern and western cities in search of a better life. From 1915 to 1970, this exodus of almost 6 million people changed the face of America. Wilkerson interviewed more than 1,000 people and gained access to previously untapped data and official records to write this definitive and vividly dramatic account of how these American journeys unfolded, altering our cities, our country, and ourselves. With stunning detail, Wilkerson tells this story through the lives of 3 unique individuals: Ida Mae Gladney, who in 1937 left sharecropping and prejudice in Mississippi for Chicago, where she achieved quiet blue-collar success and, in old age, voted for Barack Obama when he ran for an Illinois state Senate seat; sharp and quick-tempered George Starling, who in 1945 fled Florida for Harlem, where he endangered his job fighting for civil rights, saw his family fall, and finally found peace in God; and Robert Foster, who left Louisiana in 1953 to pursue medicine, becoming the personal physician to Ray Charles as part of a glitteringly successful career that allowed him to purchase a grand home where he often threw exuberant parties. Wilkerson brilliantly captures her subjects' first treacherous and exhausting cross-country trips by car and train, and their new lives in colonies that grew into ghettos, as well as how they changed their new cities with Southern food, faith, and culture, and improved them with discipline, drive, and hard work. Both a riveting microcosm and a major assessment, The Warmth of Other Suns is a bold, remarkable work, a superb account of an unrecognized immigration within our own land. Through the breadth of its narrative, the beauty of the writing, the depth of its research, and the fullness of the people and lives portrayed herein, this book is destined to become a classic. And this is the author who wrote it. She's obviously like African American herself, so this is like really personal for her. Her own parents came north during the Great Migration, and just like it's a really personal story, not just like in a dry manner, like relating facts and figures. Oh, this happened and then that happened, because you're like going on the journey with these 3 people, and also learning about the historical background like going on at the time in these different cities these people came and settled in. And I really wish like this was studied more in history classes outside of universities. If you're like specifically studying African American history, like people should know about this, like just like any other American history, instead of just like focusing on, oh, let's study the Pilgrims again, oh, here, let's study the Civil War again. Obviously you should learn about those and know about those important things too, but just like enough people need to learn about other things that aren't like so taught. Though hopefully it is changing now, because American history textbooks, at least like until the last few decades, maybe have been like notoriously like whitewashing and jingoistic. But again, that's like a subject for a whole other video. Perhaps I'll talk about that eventually someday. And this is one I got. I think this was also from the nonfiction that reads like fiction. Destiny of the Republic, A Tale of Madness, Medicine, and the Murder of a President by Candice Millard. This is about the assassination of President Garfield. James A. Garfield was one of the most extraordinary men ever elected president. Born into almost unimaginable poverty in rural Ohio, by dint of his brilliance and work ethic, he became a wunderkind scholar. He enlisted in the Union Army at the outset of the Civil War, was rapidly promoted to general, won a crucial battle, and was elected to Congress. He was a passionate advocate of freed slaves, a reformer at odds with the Republican power brokers, a devoted father, and a man who gave spellbinding speeches. In 1880, a deadlocked Republican convention turned to him as its nominee, against his will. When he ascended to the presidency, he brought a whole new dimension to American politics. His vision and integrity stood in stark relief against the machine politics that dominated the national scene, personified by the colorful and powerful New York Senator Roscoe Conkling, who became an implacable enemy. Conkling's ally, Vice President Chester A. Arthur, an amiable political hack, worked against Garfield's reform agenda from inside the administration. Then, 4 months after Garfield became president, an unhinged office seeker named Charles Guiteau, imbued with a sense of divine mission, intercepted the president in a train station, leveled a pistol, and fired twice. But the bullets didn't kill Garfield. The drama of what happened subsequently is an epic story of a nation in turmoil. Guiteau's half-delivered strike shattered the fragile mood of a country so recently fractured by war, and left the wounded president the object of a bitter, behind-the-scenes struggle for power over his administration, over the nation's future, and, most disastrously, over his medical care, as a team of physicians administered archaic and unsanitary measures. As his condition worsened, Garfield received help from an extraordinary quarter, Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone. Bell worked around the clock to create a new device capable of finding the bullet. The trial of the delusional assassin became one of the media events of the century, and one of the earliest and by far most controversial proceedings in which an insanity defense was asserted. Guiteau continued to maintain not only that he would be fully exonerated, but that he'd be elected president himself. As Garfield fought for his life, the shock of the assassination attempt galvanized the country. The epic battle between the corrupt establishment and the forces of reform turned on the actions of some very unlikely individuals, and its stunning denouement helped usher the United States into the modern age. Meticulously researched, epic in scope, relentless in narrative drive, and pulsating with an intimate human focus, Destiny of the Republic is a high-velocity account of a crucial turning point in American history. And presidential history, U.S. presidential history, has long been one of my areas of expertise, something I'm really focused on. I memorized all the presidents when I was 8 years old, around the 1988 election when George Bush Senior, who had turned out to be my distant cousin, was elected, and I actually memorized them the old-fashioned way by writing a list and just looking over it and writing it again and again and looking until I finally knew them cold. At the time there were only 41 presidents. I memorized them the old-fashioned way, the way people used to memorize things, and I kind of get really angry now when people say, "Oh, I know all the presidents." They proceed to sing a stupid freaking song. You memorized song lyrics. You don't really know the presidents in order. If someone asks you, for example, who's the 17th president, you'll have to, do some brain power and think through it came in this order, and I know this, Lincoln was 16, so this person had to be, 17, so you have to use more brain power instead of, just recalling song lyrics. You do not know all the presidents, truly, if you only know a stupid little song. But, that's just a big rant for me. Sorry. And this is another one. It's mostly in a coffee table picture book called Un-American, about the disgusting internment of Japanese American citizens during World War II. Images by Dorothea Lange, Ansel Adams, and government photographers. And it was put together by Richard Cahan and Michael Williams. And obviously hopefully everyone knows that story too. Another episode in shameful episode in American history that more people should, know about, just like we should know more about the Great Migration and Native American history. It is a shame of America, and it was documented on film. In 1942, more than 109,000 Japanese Americans, including 70,000 U.S. citizens, were picked up and sent to incarceration centers, most for the duration of the war. Amazingly, the government hired a crew of photographers to document the entire process, from the final weeks of freedom to the desolate years in camps. Now, for the first time, many of the people photographed have been located and interviewed. Their stories offer a haunting look at one of America's darkest hours. And here I can show you some of the pictures in the book. I'm sorry I don't have much space to show you. Again, I'm not in my own home, so I don't really have a lot of liberty about, where and when I can film, but hopefully, God willing, when I finally have my own home again, I'll have a greater space to do these things. So thank you very much for listening to the end. If you've not already, please consider subscribing. And I also really, really do appreciate seeing comments from people. I really would like to make a lot more friends on BookTube and AuthorTube, and the only way I can really do that is when I see comments from people. And so I really would like to build a much greater community, and also comments will help me to improve my channel and know what I should be doing more of and should be doing less of. And so see you guys again very soon. Thanks for watching again. Bye.